All right, my name is Rich Schmidt. We're here with Manuel Recio. It's November 20th, 2025, and we're at the Nicholson Library at Linfield University in McMinnville. And Manuel, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for inviting me. Yeah.
First question, let's get started with why wine?
Because wine makes me happy. So I find wine to be pretty magical, and it allows me to pursue different passions that I have. And mainly, it's three things. One is my love for agriculture and all the work that's involved in growing food and producing it. Secondly, being a lifelong learner and always challenging myself. There's always something new to learn, something new to dive into. And then third, I would say it's connecting with people. So wine lets you do that in many ways. One of those is in the whole ceremonial aspect of enjoying wine. When you open a bottle of wine, it's typically you're celebrating something and you're sharing that with people that you love. And then telling stories about wine, whether it's how it was made, what happened during that vintage, what was unique to that winemaker's philosophy perhaps, and if you took part in making that wine, what your story was in that as well. So if I can expound a little bit on the agriculture part. So I was a farmer for about 15 years. And that actually is how I ended up going into the wine world. So when I was farming, I grew specialty produce from Spain and France, and the farm was called Veridian Farms. So my wife Leslie and I started that. And growing the specialty produce, we had connections that we made with chefs. So we grew produce primarily for restaurants. We also had a CSA. We had farmers markets that we went to. But the bulk of our business was definitely through restaurants. So we had these open chef days where we would invite chefs down to the farm and they would come and tour. We were farming about 38 acres, and then at one point leased additional acreage, and we're farming 57 acres total. It was quite a bit to take on. So, in fact, if you were to lay down all of our rows of produce in one straight line, it was just over 10 miles. So quite a bit. But during these open chef days, we also had these events called Plate and Pitchfork through Erica Polmar. She organized some events where consumers could go and visit some farms and have a dinner prepared by chefs in the field. And part of that was we would give them a tour, and some winemakers were also invited to it. So we would have two chefs and a winemaker that were invited to the farm. And over the course of about 8 years, when we were working with Plate and Pitchfork to have these events, we had over 1,000 guests that came to visit Veridian Farms. One of those winemakers, or wineries I should say, that was invited was Domaine Drouhin, Oregon. So Aaron Bell and Ashley and even Veronique, we had events at our farm where they were invited winemakers, and we also had Plate and Pitchfork events over at Domaine Drouhin, where we brought our produce, and the chefs that were working there would create a meal in the middle of the vineyard. So when I first decided to get into wine, and I don't know how far back you want me to start. So
start as early as you want.
As early as I want? Okay. So getting into wine, I had, we were farming. I came upon a big life change, I should say. I basically turned 40 and we decided to stop farming anymore. So it was quite a lot of work and many hours. And we had grown the farm to a point where we decided, okay, either we're going to take on investors and grow even more, or we can take a step back and rent out the property and explore other options. So the first thing we did wasn't quite wine yet. So We started over the years when we were growing the produce. In the wintertime, we would shut down the farm, and in January and February go to Spain and France and Italy to do research trips. So these research trips consisted of us going primarily to culinary conferences like Madrid Fusión, Gastronómica in San Sebastian, and we would go to them and learn to see what the chefs were doing in their kitchens. So these are Michelin star chefs that would go and present new dishes that they were working on, or new trends that they see, or things that were inspiring them in the kitchen, and they were presenting this in front of their peers. So all the people attending these conferences were Michelin star chefs, some reporters, and then 2 farmers that walk in there too. They had, of course, different workshops and things. So we would go to them, get inspired to see what ingredients they were using, and we would try to source those ingredients too. So, for example, things like red cardoons from Tudela. So it's a cardoon where you actually consume the rib. It's a plant that's similar to an artichoke. But these cardoons are actually bright red because of the variety and also how they're grown and the soil that they're grown in. Other things like Mertensia maritima, so it's a leaf that is called oyster leaf. So it's a small leaf that grows on the northern coast of Scotland, and it tastes exactly like a raw oyster. So Joan Roca was using this over at Can Roca, and also Ferran Adrià was using it at El Bulli. So we would see these ingredients and say, okay, how can we grow this back at home in Oregon and introduce it to chefs? So we learned how those Michelin star chefs were using it, and then also travel to that particular region or that little town where that ingredient was from. So we could learn how the chefs are using it, but also how grandma was using it in traditional cooking. So take these ingredients, come back, source the seeds, then come back to the US, and then introduce them to chefs. So it was quite a learning experience for us. So definitely, I don't come from a farming background. I worked in advertising and marketing for my 20s, and then in my 30s was all farming. So. But when we had decided, going back to when we decided to stop farming and going into wine, so it was 2020, it was time for some changes, so a lot of changes, and I saw an ad for Domaine Drouhin, Oregon. They were looking for some part-time help in the tasting room. And I thought, well, I've always been interested in wine. I think I'll try this. I think I would like it, so I applied, and the person who was the tasting room manager reviewing the applications was Madeline Fauch. And Madeline is now over at Domaine Roy, but I had actually met Madeline a few years earlier at Ambonnet Champagne Bar in Portland. I'm not sure if you've ever had heard of that. So Madeline was working there when she just arrived from New Orleans, and I was carving Jamón Ibérico there. So it's funny how I had all of these previous connections that ended up leading me into the world of wine. So Madeline saw my application, invited me to come in, and of course we hit it off right away. And I had already had this previous relationship with Domaine Drouhin, with them coming to my farm and me being at their vineyard. And I loved it. So initially working on the hospitality side, I took my WSET level 1, level 2, and level 3 here at Linfield. And I thought I really want to do a harvest as well. So I asked Aaron Bell if I could apply and join the harvest team, which was pretty unusual. They typically didn't have people working in the hospitality side, working in production in the cellar. And he said, sure, we'll let you do it. So I didn't expect 2020 to be a year that was very, very challenging for the wine industry here in Oregon, with the fires and the smoke taint. But it was an incredible experience. I loved it. I loved the mechanics of the harvest. I loved everything that was happening in the cellar, seeing all of the grapes come in, working with all of the equipment, learning a little bit about wine chemistry then, and I thought I want to do more of this. So I stuck around with Domaine Drouhin and kept working on the hospitality side after harvest, and then asked if I could join the harvest crew again in 21. So in 21, Aaron said, of course, would you like to run the crush pad this year? And I thought, well, sure, great, what is that? I didn't realize how hectic that was going to be, but it was magnificent. So I got to basically manage all of the fruit that was coming in, all of the Chardonnay in the mornings, helping to weigh and determining where that was going to be processed, and then assigning which tanks it was going to go to, and then also Pinot Noir immediately after that. So we sometimes had 2 lines running with a crew of about 12 people working on the processing lines so that we could get down into the fermenters. And once fermentation was well underway, Aaron also said, would you like to learn how to run the basket press? So the Bucher Vacherin basket press, and I loved that thing. So I was trained on it by Aaron, Veronique, and then also a gentleman who came to assist them from New Zealand. He would come for harvest as well. So they taught me how to use that press, and it was an incredible opportunity because I really felt like I was at least playing a small role with a winemaking team there, getting to press all of the pomace after fermentation, taste through that, notice how every single lot was different, how every single vineyard was different, and different blocks in the vineyard, and working a lot with Aaron and Veronique. And Veronique is just an incredible person, so she will always be the benchmark for me in understanding Pinot Noir and really appreciating it. She's also just this lovely person where it doesn't matter how hectic things are on the crush pad or anything like that. She walks in and everyone is calm. It's like butterflies enter the room and and just brings this magical energy. So I really, really appreciate everything that I learned from her, and I still continue a nice relationship with her as well. In fact, I had dinner with her just about a month ago with Alban from Abbott Claim. After the 21 harvest at Domaine Drouhin, I really wanted to focus more on production in the cellar. So I applied to the UC Davis winemaking program, for the certificate program, I should say, and got accepted and started right away on that. So I was able to focus on that and still continue working part-time in hospitality and then harvest as well later on, but really hit the books hard on that. I'm someone who's pretty determined when I start to do something, and I wanted to put all of my effort into it. So of course, this is, at this point I'm in my 40s, so 45 taking chemistry for winemakers was a little bit of a challenge, but I'm glad to say that I did very, very well. So I learned so much from the instructors over at UC Davis. There were very small cohorts that we had, about 30 students going through at a time. And everything from viticulture to sensory analysis. So it was an incredible learning experience for me. And it really helped me combine a lot of the things that I was already learning in the cellar with a more focused academic approach to things. So when 22 came along, I wanted to go work at a different winery just to get a different experience with another winemaking team. And I ended up working at Cristom Vineyards. So this is with Dan Estrin, who is an incredible character as well. So he's fierce, I'd say. Very confident, very determined in what he's doing and making beautiful wines. So. And in fact, that was the last year that Steve Dorner was there as well. So being able to be at Cristom at the same time that Steve and Daniel were there was wonderful. So getting to learn from Steve's previous experience, he'd been there from the beginning at Cristom, and then Dan's fresh new takes on where he was going to take the winery and the whole winemaking philosophy. So. And then shortly after that, a gentleman who I had worked with at Domaine Drouhin, Patrick McKee, he was the cellar master at Domaine Serene, and asked if I wanted to come and join their team. So I did. So I was at Domaine Serene working in the cellar, and then went through harvest. A new winemaker came on there as well back in August. That was Carl Formaker. We're still great friends today, both of them. So, and at Serene, since I had already had a little bit of experience with the Bucher Vaslin press, they had just purchased a new one there, the much larger version of it. So in fact, they even had to bring in a special crane to unload this. And I got to be in charge of the press. So, and in fact, Carl came up with a name for me. He called me El Presidente. So, because I was able to run it pretty efficiently, I got really good at it. And we were doing up to about 7 press loads a day. By the end of harvest, I had done about 84 different press loads. So I had pressed all of the Pinot Noir for Domaine Serene in that year. So, and there was something really unique that I did that year working during harvest. So when I was at Domaine Drouhin, I noticed that the different blocks of the vineyards, when we were pressing them, we were always making the press cut. So determining when those tannins start to get a bit too bitter. And we were making the press cut around the same range for that specific block in the vineyard. So in 23, during harvest at Serene, when we would get work orders, and I would review the work order, and I was about to do a press load, I would always mark on there what we did the press cut at. So when winter came around, I was doing this with the thought that when winter came around, I'm going to input all this information and do something with it. So what I did was I took all of those work orders during my winter break of 2 weeks and put them into an Excel spreadsheet, graphed polynomial trend lines, and broke it up by vineyard, so that way you can determine what range you're going to make that press cut for that specific vineyard. And this was important not just for consistency, but also if someone else was going to be operating the press, if someone else was going to be doing the tasting, and if the press cuts were made really far off of that range, that should raise a red flag. So that was something I was very excited and very proud of doing too. So, yeah. After Domaine Serene, I had an opportunity to work over at Abbott Claim Vineyard. So, and I've actually been at Abbott Claim for the past 2 years, the last 2 vintages, so 24 and 25. So, and Abbott Claim was, and still is to me, just a dream of a winery. So, it's they really spare no expense in making the best wine possible. Alban is brilliant. He just has this incredible approach to making wines where he really wants to reflect the terroir of everything. He really wants everything to have a sense of place and it to be reflective of that place. So it's a very different approach compared to the other wineries that I worked at. So he integrates a lot of lees. He also has a very minimalist approach. So everything is using native yeast as well, and very methodical. And he is just has an incredible team there, an incredible winery where we're working with different fermentation vessels, from stainless steel to concrete vessels, Nicovelo tanks from Italy, and Foudras, of course, from France too. It's much smaller production compared to what I was used to. So at Domaine Serene, we were doing about 800 tons of fruit. So at Abbott Claim, it's around 140 tons of fruit. So, and there they are about 220 to 250 barrels in the cellar, whereas Domaine Serene had 4,000 barrels in the cellar. So very, very different scale. What that smaller scale allows the team at Abbott Claim to do is focus on every individual barrel. and really monitor how that wine is evolving in each barrel. And when it comes down to blending and deciding which barrels are going to be used, instead of doing a barrel lot composite where you go and maybe there's a block of 200 and some barrels, you sample 10 or maybe even 20 of those and say, okay, that's what this lot tastes like. At Abbott Claim, we actually would go through and pull samples of every single barrel. And then the team would sit down, we would all sit down, and for about 2 days, taste every single barrel and analyze them and decide what were its strengths, what were its weaknesses, what could be improved, which blend would this be the best for. And that level of detail and that level of dedication is just outstanding. So it's really a place that just has continued to challenge me and really keeps me engaged. And their dedication to everything from viticulture. They use the Simone and Cyric consultants from Italy. And of course, with my love for agriculture, I actually went ahead and did the Vine Master Pruning certification as well through them. Because I loved it, but they care so much about the vineyards. They care about everything that they're doing intentionally, and it's not just about producing wine for the sake of sales. It's more about making the best possible wine that they can. So, and that to me was something I really aligned with. So, yeah.
That's a lot to cover.
That is a lot.
That's a lot. We're going to come back to all of that.
Yes.
Let's talk about life before you got into farming and then wine. So let's go back to where you were born and raised and what brought you to eventually to Veridian Farms in Oregon.
Okay, yeah. So I was born in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and at a very young age, at about 2 years old, my parents moved to the mainland. So we lived in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So talk about culture shock for my parents. So going from sunny Caribbean islands to Amish country, really. So, and in Lancaster, it's a very small community. I went to a private Catholic school there, St. Anne's, and was there until I was about 12 years old. And my parents worked for what was originally Sperry, New Holland, tractor company and combine company. Later on, that was bought by Ford, and it became Ford New Holland, and then it was bought by Fiat. So it's still called New Holland, but they make all sorts of tractors and combines and even grape harvesting equipment. So yeah. So when I was about 12, at that time, Ford New Holland was opening up a Latin American marketing office in South Florida, and that was to serve all of the clients that they had and distributors and dealers that they had in South America. My parents worked on the marketing team for Ford New Holland for Latin America. So they went down there and helped to set up that office. So we moved to Coral Springs, Florida. So that's in the Boca Raton area, just between Boca Raton and Fort Lauderdale. Another big change. And at first, I thought, oh, no, I don't want to leave all of my friends here in Pennsylvania. You know, I was a young teenager. But then I discovered the beach. And things changed. So Florida was fantastic. So I don't think I would like to live there now, just because of how I've changed as a person. So it's a place where you have to be in your, drive everywhere, and things can be a little bit far away. But it's still Caribbean lifestyle, a little bit laid back, and of course all of that Latin influence. So at home, we spoke Spanish, Portuguese, my stepfather was Brazilian, and English. So unfortunately, my Portuguese at this stage has degraded into what's called portañol. So it's a mix of Portuguese and Spanish because I just haven't practiced it as much. But being, of course, in South Florida helped me really get in touch with my Latin roots and experience that every day. I ended up going to Florida International University for my undergrad, and I was a marketing and international business dual major. And part of my program, I had to go study abroad for at least a semester. So I chose Spain, and I ended up going to the University of Seville, and this was back in 1995, in January of 1995. And when I went there, I met someone who was going to change my life. And she was going to school at Linfield College, and her name was Leslie Lucas. So 30 years later, we're still together. We're married and going on another adventure back to Spain, but we can get back to that a little bit later. So during my time in Seville, it was just spectacular. So going to these classrooms the building was originally the Fábrica Real de Tabaco, so the Royal Tobacco Factory. The University of Seville started in 1505. So I was going to classrooms that were almost 500 years old. So it just changes your perspective on everything. And on that note, it also changed my perspective on world events. It was the first time I lived in another country and saw the news being reported from something that wasn't American, a perspective that was completely different, whether it was media from Germany or media from Spain, and seeing how people viewed things really changed how I looked at things. So I fell in love with Spain. Of course, a lot of people who are from Puerto Rico refer to Spain as La Madre Patria, so like the mother country, And many of us, of course, have Spanish roots there, going back generations. From my father's side, actually 6 generations back, they're from the Canary Islands. And from my mother's side, so her last name is Basque, and actually from the Basque region on the French side, so a little town called Irisarri. I've been there many times, and actually went back there with my mother as well, so I got to take her there. But exploring Spain, the markets are just so vibrant, the history, the castles that are, the wine that's there, the food that's there, and every region is so different. So in the south, you have what I think most people think about Spain, so Andalusia, with things like flamenco and bullfights and lots of tapas culture. Whereas in the north, in Asturias and Galicia, it's very Celtic. So you go into a bar there and you'll hear bagpipes and bow drums, so not what you would expect in Spain, coming from here. And then in the Basque region, of course, it's very much like Oregon. They're focused on culinary values, so food is very, very important to them, having fresh produce, fresh fish, fresh meats, and then the Basque culture is very unique on its own, too. So exploring Spain, I loved it, and during that time I was dating Leslie, and we decided, how could we get back here? What can we do? Well, we had to finish up our undergrad studies first. So I came back to Miami. Leslie, at that time, she was studying archaeology in Spanish. So actually, she went off to Israel to work on an archaeological dig for a while, unearthing Crusaders' tombs there at it was a Roman settlement called Caesarea before. And then later she went to Nicaragua, and then was in Costa Rica, and then back to Oregon. And we had a long distance relationship for a while, but then it ended up graduating. And Leslie moved to Miami, where I had just finished up my school. And she was there for a couple of months and said, nope, I'm an Oregon girl. This isn't going to work. So we came back to Oregon. This was in January of '97. So I had finished up my studies in '96, in December of '96, and in January of '97 I moved out to Oregon. And the first place that I went to when I came out to Oregon, Leslie took me to a place called Westwind on the coast. So Camp Westwind. So it's over in Nesquin, and I think she really knew what she was doing, because when we went out there, we had to meet this biology grad student that met us at a canoe. We had to cross during the tides. She had rented this cabin, so we crossed the river there, went out to the headland. We were staying at this cabin, hiked around for several days when we were staying there. There was no one else on the headland. There were herds of elk running up on the headland. I think we saw some whales in a cove that was there. It was magical. I thought, this is beautiful. And then the rain set in later. And coming from sunny Florida, that took a while to get used to. So, and of course, it was quite a culture shock too for me. So coming from South Beach, Miami, to Oregon was quite a change. So yeah, so. I'll never forget my first job interview that I had out here in Oregon was at a wine importer and exporter, and they were located in Banks. Apparently because it was close to a rail line, and that was convenient for the guy who was running this. And this was about my first week here in Oregon, and as I was driving up to Banks, I saw population 321. And I thought, there are more people in my macroeconomics class than in this town. What am I doing here? Of course, Banks has grown much more since then. So, but it was a big shock to me. So, but I worked in advertising here in Oregon because that was my background. I worked at a couple ad agencies. One of them in particular was CMD, Creative Media Development, fairly big. Back then we had about 220 employees, so quite large. And even though it was quite large, our biggest client was Geldwin, which manufactured windows and doors. And actually Geldwin ended up purchasing the agency. So I worked exclusively for that client, so on the door side. So got to attend lots of building conferences with them. This, of course, was back when Geldwin was growing like crazy. We would, go down for meetings down their headquarters down in Klamath Falls. And sometimes when I would go down to some of the meetings, I would take one of their corporate jets. So go over to Flightcraft at PDX, hop into the G3, and take a corporate jet down to meetings. I was like, wow, look, Mom. The advertising world is very fast-paced, very hectic, very deadline-driven. I learned a lot during that. But one day, we received, meaning my wife and I, we received a phone call from my father-in-law. And he told my wife, Leslie, that he was going to sell the farm, that they were retiring, the family farm that they had on Grand Island in Oregon. And Leslie said, well, you've got a buyer. And I was like, what are you talking about? I mean, I had never been on a farm like that. I mean, I visited a farm, but I'd never, didn't know what it took to run a farm or become a farmer. And Leslie and I had always wanted to have our own business and find a way where we could travel a lot more too, where we'd have that flexibility, but also have our own independence. So we quit our jobs and sold our house that we had bought in Portland and bought the farm. So I, of course, had no idea how to run tractors, how to plow a field, how to set up irrigation, crop planting, all of this. I had to learn all of that. So. And it was a steep learning curve for me. So, and that's I brought all of my marketing background to that because I thought, okay, if we're going to do this, if we're going to become farmers, we're going to do it our way. So the first thing that we did was rip out about 9 acres of blackberries and about 2 acres of blueberries. My father-in-law wasn't too happy about that, but we really wanted this to be our own. So. And since Leslie and I had met in Spain and loved the markets there, we thought, well, why don't we grow some of the produce that we saw in those markets? So we decided to start growing some of those things that we saw. So we actually even did a little bit of things from Italy. So chicories from Italy, peppers from Spain, beans from Spain, pumpkins from southern France. So little by little, we started planting these things and growing them. And I brought my marketing background there and decided I need to create a brand for this. So we called it Veridian Farms, which is actually after a Veridian design movement. So that was an architectural movement in creating things that were more environmentally focused and environmentally sound. And I wanted to make sure that everything that we did at the farm kept the environment in mind. So we weren't necessarily chasing organic certification, but we just wanted to do everything thoughtfully. So we called it Veridian Farms. I put together marketing materials. We even did promotional materials like ads, and I put these boxes together and I decided, let's go after some chefs and see if we can get some of these restaurants. And this was perfect timing because this was actually the beginning of the whole farm to table movement. So at that time, there were only about 5 or 6 farms that were selling direct to restaurants in Portland, including us. So I would bring these boxes with samples of our produce and marketing materials to the chefs. And I'll never forget who our first client was. So and that was Cheryl Walkerhauser from Pig's Patisserie. So she bought berries from us, and then later on we got Chef Dolan Lane from Blue Hour. And the list just grew on and on and on. We eventually were working with about 250 chefs all over the US. So primarily in Portland and Seattle, but we worked with restaurants like Jose Andres and all of his restaurants, so we provided produce for them. We were working with specialty foods distributor in New York, Regalis Foods, who was distributing our produce to many of the high-end restaurants there, Le Bernardin, Daniel Boulud. So all of a sudden our produce was getting into these really high-end restaurants, and we started to get some attention because of what we were growing. So where initially I was going after these chefs and kind of targeting them to present our products to them, now they had started contacting us. And we had to start saying no to some of them because we couldn't take on more. We were growing and growing and growing, but one of the things I learned early on was to not give out my personal cell phone number to chefs because we would start getting calls for produce deliveries at 2 a.m. in the morning. Of course, they're done with their long shifts, working at the restaurant, and then, I need produce for tomorrow, so they would text or call at that hour. No, we had to start putting limits on things. But I learned so much from our farming experience. There were some very challenging times that we had in farming, times when there was a lot of uncertainty, whether there was maybe some disease in a certain patch of some of our fields, or weather. I'll never forget one year we lost about 2 acres of baby lettuces to a hailstorm that we had in the second week of June. So there were definitely times where I was on the side of I'd be standing on the side of the field and think, oh my gosh, how are we going to make it? How are we going to do this? So very, very challenging. And there were other times where you get to see your name in lights. We were at the James Beard House many times. We saw our names on menus anywhere we'd go in Portland. Of course, working with so many chefs, we worked with just about any restaurant in Portland, from Vitaly Paley, Pascal Sultan, who had a craft bistro, Greg Higgins, Naomi Pomeroy from Beast. So many really talented chefs here. And then even in Seattle with Renee Erickson and all of her restaurants, Chef Joseba Jimenez de Jimenez from the Harvest Vine. It's just so many great experiences with him.
When you, I have so many questions about this.
Good. I have all day.
When you mentioned, obviously you start small, you're looking for certain chefs who you think kind of fit with what you're trying to do, and then you were growing and growing into hundreds of chefs. Tell me about maintaining those kinds of relationships, getting to know the people and their needs, and figuring out how you fit into that kind of ecosystem with all these dynamic and busy personalities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there definitely were a lot of dynamic personalities, especially in the chef world. So we had to learn how to grow produce that was tailored to them. So chefs are very particular about the produce that they receive because they have a certain concept in mind when they're putting a dish together. And I'm mainly referring to chefs that are I would like to say medium to high-end restaurants where they're going to have very elaborate plates and charge respectively for that. So the produce that shows up has to be perfect. And we decided quality has to be number one. So we worked to make sure we had a great crew that would help us do that. Everything was picked by hand. We would pick things in the morning, usually starting around 5:30 a.m., and then have it in chefs' kitchens by no later than noon that morning. So baby carrots had to be a certain size, the edible flowers had to be perfect, peppers had to be a certain size, melons had to be a certain ripeness level, and then of course the varieties had to be really unique and distinct too, so something that was really going to help them make their plates stand out to their customers that were dining with them. So in the early days, there was this conference called Farmer Chef Collaborative, so in Portland. So we would go to these to help network with chefs. I also started partnering with other purveyors too. So Nikki USA was distributing wild game meats and other specialty meats to chefs in the area, and they would have this event called Wild About Game up in the mountain over in Mount Hood. And I contacted them and said, well, they had this cook-off where they would have different, almost like an Iron Chef type of an event, where they would have a surprise ingredient and the chefs had to prepare something for them. And the Oregonian and other media would be there, to help judge them. And I said, well, you probably need some produce for these events, right? How about if we donate it? And Jeff from Nikki was like, sure, that'd be great. I think they're used to buying all of that produce. And we thought, no, this is a great way that we can work together and be in front of those chefs. So we did that. And of course, that helped us get in front of the chefs and create relationships that weren't just purveyor, but also see that we were in this whole same movement, this whole collaborative move to really elevate food in Portland back then. So really exciting time with chefs coming up from, a lot of them coming up from California, coming from out of states, where the food scene was just really taking off. So developing those relationships with those chefs, many of those chefs became very close friends too. So we were hanging out with them, going over to their birthday parties, and that was important for us. So I think having that transparency for them to see us as people and what we're bringing, they could come to our farm anytime that they wanted. We would show them. We didn't have to get organic certification or third-party certification because they knew we had that direct relationship with them. So it was very much an open farm and very transparent about everything that we did and how we grew and just nurturing those relationships all along the way. So yeah. I would sometimes, of course, get a little starstruck with some of the chefs, but my wife would always keep me in check for that.
Put the autograph book away.
Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned earlier, before I move on, you mentioned Jamón and Ibérico. Yeah. Tell me about that part of your life and career.
Yes. Okay. So, in between, I kind of like to think my life is in decades. So in my 20s, I worked in advertising and marketing. In my 30s, I was farming, and then in my 40s, I worked in specialty foods and wine. So, from about 40 to 45, as we were slowly transitioning out of farming, we started working with specialty foods and importing specialty foods from Spain. So, and the reason why we did this was because as we were gradually getting out of farming, we thought, well, with all of these trips that we make every year to Spain, we've met some really incredible producers. We already have this network of chefs that we're working with. And we met these fantastic olive oil producers or Jamón Ibérico producers or conservas producers, so people who were making tinned fish, which are kind of all the rage now, but back then we were just starting to learn about that. And we thought, we know these people by first name, so we have these relationships, we have this network of chefs, why don't we bring some of some of those items here? And we started doing that, and we called that conserva, so after the conservas. And we actually had a little shop over in Northwest Portland as well. And One of those ingredients that we brought over was Jamón Ibérico, and me being a bit of the perfectionist, I thought if I'm going to have something and sell it to these chefs, I want to know everything about it. So I had always seen people slicing Jamón Ibérico. It's a very integral part of Spanish culture. So when I was living there, and I thought, well, it'd be neat to learn how to do that someday. And there was a shop that's over in New York called De España. It's over on the Lower East Side. And I had visited that on several trips that we did to New York through our farming career and events that we had there. And I followed them, and I got an email from them saying that, oh, they're going to have this master carver coming in from Spain who's going to teach a class for one day. And if anyone would like to come to shoot them an email. I said, sign me up. So they were like, okay. So I went to the class. So I booked a flight over to New York to take a one-day class over there. And it turns out that the guy who was teaching this class at De España was Raúl Martín. So Raúl is the grandson of Fermín Martín. So Fermín is the brand of Jamón Ibérico that you can find in the United States now. So they were actually the first ones to export from Spain into the US. So the grandson of Fermín was there teaching this class, and he said, you know what, you're actually pretty good at this. And he goes, and you came all the way from Oregon for this class? And I said, yes, yeah. I want to learn all about it. And I really enjoyed it. And he said, you're good, you want to learn more about it? And I said, sure. So he connected me with an academy over in Spain that teaches people how to become professional cortador, which is a professional carver of Jamón Ibérico. So I went to that academy, and then after going to that academy, I connected with several master carvers in Spain. So that's where we become a maestro cortador, a master carver. I took classes, private classes from them, and these are carvers that would carve for the royal family, the Real Madrid soccer team. One of them carved for Obama, so carved for the royal family in England as well as in Spain. So these are the people who are at the top of their game, so to speak. I learned a lot from them, and when I had finished the courses of the academy, gone through some of those other master classes, I finally got the title of Maestro Cortador, so Master Ham Carver, and came back to the US, and I got a contact, I got an email from the Embassy of Spain's Trade Commission. And they said, would you be interested in helping us to promote Jamón Ibérico? Of course. Who's going to say no to the Embassy of Spain? So, from my perspective. So what this entailed was going to James Beard events, going to culinary institutions where they were presenting day-long seminars on Jamón Ibérico, on olive oil from Spain, on wine from Spain. And I was at the time, and still am actually, one of only 4 master carvers in the United States. And I had a very strategic advantage. I can speak both Spanish and English. I'm completely bilingual. So I ended up teaching classes at the Cervantes Institute in Chicago, the Culinary Institute of America over in San Antonio, College de DuPage in Chicago, so different places in San Francisco, in LA. They just sent me all over the country, essentially, to help put on these events where I would teach a class for culinary students, and then that grew to being master classes for chefs. So they would actually fly in restaurant groups or groups of chefs for an afternoon or even 2 days, where they would learn all about olive oil, and then I would teach them master classes on carving technique, production of Jamón Ibérico from the different regions in Spain, how to plate them, how to use them for restaurant service too, and how that's going to be integrated into their menus. It was an incredible experience. I got to not only work with the Spanish embassy, representing them doing that, but then several producers that were trying to export into Spain, producers of Jamón Ibérico, contacted me and said, could you help us out? We're going to be at the Fancy Food Show in San Francisco. We want to get into the market over there, and you already have connections with chefs. Would you be willing to provide technical assistance and carving assistance for that to help teach our customers that were growing, our customer base that were growing over there? And I said, sure. So I ended up working with Cinco Jotas, which is the most prestigious producer in all of Spain. Did events for them at Pebble Beach Food and Wine Festival. Also worked for Fermin as well, and then did events at Jose Andres at his restaurant over in Las Vegas. So that was a lot of fun to be carving for him, and working with Jose. Jose is an incredible personality too. So such a generous person and just so full of life. I mean, to be able to keep up with him is quite a task. So I get to represent these producers at these events. Flew back and forth to Spain quite a bit as well. So visiting them, visiting the different ranches, you can call them, where they raise the jamón, where they raise the Ibérico pigs. So in some cases, for example, like at Cinco Jotas, and they're located in Jabugo, which is just outside of Seville in Spain. They would have a minimum of 2 hectares dedicated per pig. And actually by Spanish law, you have to have at least 1 hectare, which is 2.45 acres, is 1 hectare. So in order for that to be classified as Jamón Ibérico, it has to have at least 1 hectare. But some producers like Cinco Jotas and Castro y Gonzalez, who I worked with quite a bit as well, they would have at least 2 hectares. So that's 5 acres dedicated per pig, basically on a mountainside. So when I would go out to the ranches to go visit them, we would go see, let's go see the pigs today, see where they're at. There would be guys on walkie-talkies, on ATVs that would tell us, okay, we think they're over here, because they travel about 9 miles a day. The pigs are out there foraging, so you actually have to go and find them. So, and then of course the curing bodegas. So the bodegas are where they actually cure the jamón for a minimum of 3 years. That's another legal requirement for it to be classified as Jamón Ibérico. Are magnificent. They look like museums. I mean, and they are they have to be done in certain areas. So it's a mountain area where it's cool year round. The humidity is perfect. And they're always in the area that's where the dehesa is. So the dehesa are the oak savannas that are on the western side of Spain, bordering Portugal. So, and that's where all of the oak groves are. So, because the pigs eat the acorns that fall from the trees. So specifically during Montanera season, which is October through April. So there are 3 different types of acorns that they eat. So gall oak, holm oak, and cork oak. And the different regions that are approved for Jamón Ibérico production have different mixes of which particular oak tree is more prevalent. So for example, in the south, in Córdoba, and over in Jabugo, they're more holm oak trees. So that ends up producing a much sweeter type of jamón. Whereas in the north, you may have more gall oak and cork oak trees. So much more pungent and different flavor profiles to it. So carving jamón was a lot of fun. I got to travel. That's of course something I enjoyed. It's very meditative for me as well to carve and do these beautiful plates, for people. But at a certain time in my life, so around when I was 45, I was working both in wine and still a little bit in jamón, and I had to make a choice. I had just come back from a trip in Spain, so visiting Castro y Gonzalez, a producer, and they offered me a very nice position working with them as their top master carver to represent them in the United States, but also in Asia and other countries and other regions as well. So I was going to be traveling to China, so on the road quite a bit. Wasn't quite sure if I had wanted to do that. And then I thought, where do I want to take this career with carving jamón? I was just getting into wine, but wine had hooked me. And I thought, I really want to be in wine. I really want to get back to where I can combine agriculture, where I can combine that knowledge, where I can keep learning more, where I can keep doing things. And it was just really connecting with people and enjoying wine and the process of making wine. There's a lot of camaraderie during harvest that happens that I thought, I'm just completely hooked on this, and I want to do this. And I turned down a very lucrative offer to be in a very prestigious position to work with Castro Gonzalez as their carver. And I thought, no, I'm going to completely focus on wine, and I need to turn over that page and just go into this with no hesitation. So I made that choice, and that's where I am today. So still with wine.
So before we move fully to wine, I do want to ask one more question about the jamón, because I'm so interested in this. So obviously, this is a very long answer, I'm sure, but as I guess as succinctly as you can tell it, what is the key to carving? What is it that you're learning? What is it you have to master in order to be a master?
Mm-hmm. It's technique, and so basically slicing technique, keeping in mind all of the bone structure that's in the jamón, knowing how to plate it, what temperature it needs to be at, how it's going to look appealing to guests when you're plating it, of course your speed, and then in being able to plate it quickly and in your slicing technique, and also communicating that. So storytelling is very important as well. So informing guests and telling people how that jamón was made, what was involved in the process, what's special about the jamón. So with my marketing background, of course, the storytelling is very integral to that, whether you're selling doors and windows or you're talking about jamón, and later on for me talking about wine, so combining all of that together. So yeah.
So you said that by this point wine had hooked you. I'm curious about, before you kind of dove into wine, what was your relationship with wine? What was your knowledge level? At what point did it start becoming a bigger part of your life?
Mm-hmm. So wine was always around at home growing up. So it wasn't, I would say my parents were aficionados, so my stepdad in particular loves champagne and Chablis, so wine was always at home, but it wasn't a really, really important part of our life. So when I moved to Oregon, I definitely learned more about wine because, especially here in the Willamette Valley, learning about Pinot and learning about Chardonnay. We were members of a couple different wine clubs because we had, gone out wine tasting. And I'll actually never forget, when I first was working in advertising here, we wanted to take some clients out to go wine tasting. It was kind of a big thing back then. And back then there were only about 7 wineries that you could go and visit and go wine tasting. So I remember taking our group out to Lang, and, Don and Wendy rolled up the garage door. They had 2 barrels out there. The dogs came running out, jumped up on top of you, and Don was just pouring the wine, and we tasted through wines right there. It was a very, very casual and very informal. It's grown so much since then, so much. And I was learning to appreciate wine, but nothing like what it was like later on for me. And I think it was especially because of my farming experience that I would learn to appreciate it more, because the viticulture involved in growing the grapes and making the wine, but my sense of smell too. So there are certain things that I always look back on in my farming career, and that's one of those is standing at the edge of the field, of a strawberry field in midsummer, when it's already toward the end of the strawberry season, and it's the end of the day when the sun is setting, and our farm was on Grand Island, so it's an island in the Willamette River about halfway between Dayton and West Salem. And the Van Duzer quarter winds would come in. So come in over Amity and then swoop down over the island. So if you're standing in a strawberry field around sunset, what you smell is vanilla and tobacco, because the leaves on the strawberry plants are already getting crisped up because they're dried out from the intense sun during the day. And you smell vanilla from the strawberries that are overripe and becoming almost jammy. And that wind just comes through it, and it's intoxicating. So I got to appreciate scents like that. So cutting fresh chicories, I know exactly what that smells like, and it transports me back to what it's like during that particular vintage in that field, during that harvest season. What blueberries are like when you just pick them from the bush and eat them. And that really helped me a lot to understand wine later on, and be able to pick out little nuances in assessing and analyzing wine. To this day, one of my favorite things is actually just walking through the cellar. And I can tell you exactly, well, I can't articulate it so well, but I can physically remember what the cellar smells like over at Domaine Drouhin, what the cellar is like at Cristom, what it is like when I'm down in the cellars at Domaine Serene and at Abbott Claim, where I'm around in the white cellar smelling the Chardonnays, have a little bit of a reductive note, or being in the red cellar. Those ambient scents are very, very important for me, and they become almost like a food memory. Where it transports me back to that. So when I'm smelling or tasting one of those wines, I immediately think of that place, or I immediately think of that vineyard or that location.
So once you started working in wine, you mentioned obviously going through WSET training, UC Davis, while also working in hospitality and then in the cellar. So we'll talk about the education part of it first. Tell me about the WSET program, the UC Davis program. What were the biggest takeaways for you as you started to develop a more, I guess, world of wine education?
The biggest takeaways for me with WSET was it really helped me understand all the factors that influence wine quality and wine style. So when I took my WSET level 3, it was still just during COVID times. So a lot of it was actually remote. So there was a change that we had with our instructors during the time. It started off first with Bree Stock and then later on with Samantha Cole Johnson. And Samantha is an incredible force as well. So I'll never forget when we would do the tastings, she would taste a wine and immediately start rattling off, what this wine's body was like, what the style was like, just going through this incredible laundry list within seconds. And I was like, oh my gosh, that just blew me away. I was a bit intimidated too. I'm like, wow, this is what I have to do in my classes. But it helped me learn a lot. It helped me understand how weather affects wine, how geographical locations, soil, everything, all of these things hang up, winemaking practices, how that's going to impact wine as well. And that gave me a lot of the academic background for it, which was really important for working in the tasting room later on, to be able to describe a wine to our guests that were there, or be able to tell them why this wine has certain vanilla notes, or why the tannins on this one is particularly bitter, or maybe a little bit more stringent than other wines. Why wine is going to change over time in bottle, and taking these complex principles and just turning it into everyday language when you're sitting and sharing this wine with someone at a tasting room, or even with friends. So. Later on, going into the UC Davis program, so of course that was a very deep dive, and got to utilize a lot of my farming background. That gave me a lot of understanding for the viticulture portion, but of course learning all about the chemistry and how wine is a very complex solution, how it changes, how there are so many different things that happen in the cellar, and it evolves over time. What are things that you can do to mitigate things that may cause faults in wine, and what you can do to make sure that the safe practices to make sure that you can take care of it and make sure it evolves in a safe and sound manner. And also understanding how different winemakers, and all the winemakers that I've worked with are vastly different, understanding their approaches and seeing what it is that I like from all of that. So, yeah. And having that technical understanding through that coursework and that studying Also helped me be more involved in conversations with those winemakers and really be part of the whole process. Yeah, I never thought I would be talking about, anthocyanins and how pH is going to affect, what the color of the wine is going to be. Is it because it's quinoidal blue with a high pH, or, Flavellium red because it's a lower pH? So, and things like this. It's just, it's fascinating to me. It keeps me on my toes, keeps me engaged, keeps me learning, and keeps challenging me.
So you talked about your first harvest experience being in 2020, obviously a strange and kind of horrible year. Let's talk about 2021 a little bit. You mentioned kind of coming back second time at DDO with Aaron and having added responsibility. Tell me about a more normal harvest. What was that experience like for you, and what was it about those experiences that made production feel like something you wanted to continue doing?
Okay, yeah, so definitely the whole frenzy that you have during harvest too. So I really thrive in that sort of environment. So with all the fruit coming in, the tractors are unloading that fruit, and you have to stack it, get it onto the processing line, review everything quickly, communicate with the winemaking team, being the senior winemaking team, on where this fruit is going to go, which fermenter it's going into. Of course, looking at it, tasting throughout. It's incredible, and the camaraderie that you develop with your teammates during that is spectacular as well. So I really loved learning about how all the blocks were different, so how the fruit is different from year to year. The mechanics, of course, of actually working during harvest, working with the different pumps, doing découvage, the dig outs. So that's a lot of fun for me. So. And from my farming background, working on tractors and becoming a gear nerd, so working with equipment, seeing all this shiny new equipment to work with in the cellar was a lot of fun. But I will say some of the most pleasing or some of the most reflective and moments where I've been most happy was actually just being in the cellar, topping those barrels. It's quiet. You look at the work that you've put in during harvest, and now it's in barrel, and helping to take care of that wine through its maturation process, which might be, in the case of Pinot, up to 18 months. So it's really it's a very, very quiet, solemn environment that I really enjoy. So yeah.
What have been the biggest lessons for you, or I guess new skills that you've developed in your time in the cellar? And as you look back, from your work at Abbott Claim back towards Domaine Drouhin, where has the confidence been built? What is it you feel more capable of now?
It's my skill set and my confidence level has grown quite a bit from first starting off at Domaine Drouhin and 6 harvests later being at Abbott Claim. So everything from my comfort level in the cellar, working with different equipment. Of course, if you work successive years at a certain place, you learn to know, or you get to know exactly where every piece of equipment is. So it's easy for you to, when you're having to problem solve, know where to find it. Knowing how that particular winemaker's philosophy is with the wines. So for example, at Abbott Claim, working with extensive lees integration, including gross lees with the wines. At other wineries, there's no way that they would do that. It would seem too risky. But I've learned how to be patient and to really pay attention to the wines and listen to them and see how they're evolving, and not to try to rush things so much. So, and that's been invaluable for me. So, not just in winemaking, but in life overall, to learning how to be a little bit more patient and just go with the flow a bit. So, yeah. Yeah.
So you spoke earlier about kind of initial impressions of the Oregon wine industry and of taking clients out when it was still pretty small, not a lot of options for kind of tasting experiences. Obviously, a lot has changed. Tell me about outside of just the pure size of Oregon wine industry, what are the other changes you've seen? How has the industry evolved and grown? What are the biggest differences you see in it now as you look at it?
Now I've seen, yes, not sure it has grown quite a bit, but the amount of outside interest that I've seen, meaning outside of Oregon, more people coming from California to develop vineyards and wineries here. Of course, coming from Europe as well. So we now have 2 wineries that are owned from wineries in Italy here in the valley. More coming from Burgundy, and there are more coming there are more that will be here soon as well. So, so there's a lot of growth here. While Pinot Noir has always been the star, I really think Chardonnay is going to take Oregon even to a higher level. So I'm very, very fond of the Chardonnays coming from Yola-Amity. Those higher elevation sites are just spectacular. Abbott Claim actually has one called Lily Springs that they've been working on for a few years, and they're up to 1,100 feet there. So you can actually see the Van Duzer corridor from up there at the Lily Springs Vineyard. So I see more opportunities for growth and really focusing on premium wines here. So I was recently in California over the summer and got to visit some friends over in Sebastopol, and went to visit wineries in Sonoma and Napa. And sadly, I would say that in Napa, it was a little heartbreaking to drive through there and see these vineyards that had been ripped out. And I was speaking to someone there, told me that there were, it's over 500,000 tons that actually weren't even picked in California last year. So that, of course, to me is a bit concerning. Is that going to happen up here in Oregon? And I think Oregon is so different because of all of the small producers that we have here, relative in scope and size compared to California. And it's very collaborative. And that's definitely, if there's anything that 2020 taught us with the smoke taint and all the issues there, is that the wine industry here in Oregon comes together whenever they're challenged. So, and I think they'll continue to do that. So, and it's so collaborative. Everyone shares information. They're very transparent and open up their cellars to everyone. Of course, at the end of every harvest, the teams go around and visit other cellars, and that's wonderful to go somewhere and everyone is friendly and wants to share what they're doing there. So I think Oregon still has a pretty bright future ahead. Even though I am moving to Spain here in a bit. That doesn't mean that I've completely closed the book on coming back to Oregon. So I might be back. So
that does kind of lead to my next question. So you have a new chapter in your life starting soon. Tell us about it.
Yes. So again, those decade things. So I just turned 50 this year, and it had always been a lifelong dream for me to go back to Spain and possibly retire there, certainly live there. So 30 years later, after originally studying over in Seville at the university there, we're doing that. So I'll be going to Spain on a non-lucrative visa for the first 2 years. So, which means that technically I can't work and be paid. So, of course, I want to continue working in wine. So what I'm going to do is work as an unpaid intern and explore a couple different regions that I want to work in. So one of those is Rioja. I've always had my eyes set on that. Haro is a little town in particular that I just adore. It's where Bodegas Muga and Lopez de Heredia are located, and La Rioja Alta. These are wineries that I've visited several times already. So, and the town is just the perfect size for me. So, and visiting those wineries has been around over 100 years, and most of them are all underground, these magnificent cellars and this long winemaking tradition. It's something that I'd like to experience and go be a part of. So I also very much like the Albariños from Rías Baixas in Galicia. And another location that I'm going to look at to potentially stay at for longer term is over in Ribera del Duero. So there they produce tempranillos, but much more of a bold style. So a couple of years ago, I had an opportunity to visit Vega Sicilia, and I have Veridian Drouhin to thank for that. She actually arranged that. It's a winery that is not open to the public. They don't even have a tasting room or anything, but they are part of the Primum Familia Vine group, which Domaine Drouhin is part of this group. So Veridian contacted them, said, we have someone from Domaine Drouhin who is going to visit Spain. Would you be willing to show him around? So we went, and I was so impressed by everything at Vega Sicilia. The level of detail, the level of commitment that they have is just, it's beyond words. You see their fermentation hall, it's all glass, metal, and wood. It looks like a museum. They have their own coopers there. Of course, they make their own barrels. They have their own forests of oak trees that they have planted because they have a 300-year plan for the winery. It's just amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And I was so inspired when I was at Vega Sicilia. I thought, this is what I wanted. This level of dedication, this level of commitment is what I want to carry forward in everything I do related to wine, and I think I've stayed true to that, and I absolutely want to continue to stay true to that. So Spain, in 2 weeks I'll be there, starting off in Donostia, San Sebastian in the Basque region. So I've been to San Sebastian with my wife Leslie, I mean probably at least 20 times. So we have many friends there. It's going to be a great starting point for us because we'll have that network of friends. Some of them are professional tour guides, others are professional cookbook writers and authors, and some of them own their own restaurants. In fact, one of them we met through a gastronomic society over in the Chocos of San Sebastian. We actually got to go and take a cooking class from him in one of the chocos there. So we have this network of friends. It's going to be a great place for us to start off. We have an apartment already. It overlooks the beach on one side and the bay on the other. So with a rooftop terrace, I mean, I don't think I can go wrong. And of course, San Sebastian it's a culinary capital of Spain. So it's going to be a magnificent place to start off. And we'll see where life takes us from there. So may even end up doing a little bit of work in Burgundy, or even over in Pays Basque. So there's a gentleman that I visited who's my friend Thomas Sauve of Lingua Franca. His best friend has a winery who they actually met over at DRC when working together. He has a winery over in Pays Basque just outside of Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port where the Camino de Santiago starts. And he is working with Tannat, so a very particular varietal that's grown quite a bit in that region, very intense wines. But he sources all of his barrels from DRC. He's doing incredible work there, and I think having the opportunity to possibly work with him for a harvest is there as well. So
that apartment situation sounds real rough. Yeah. Sorry for your future suffering there.
So I feel like I've earned it after the many hours, plowing fields and during harvest. It's time.
Yeah, an amazing experience. As you look ahead, you mentioned, Spain is open-ended for you. You may come back, you may stay, you may retire there. Is there anything else that you need to accomplish? Is there anything you want to do? Do you have a long-term vision for having your own winery project, or what's on the long-term horizon?
Mm-hmm. So long-term, I don't have any aspirations to be the head winemaker somewhere or to have my own winery. I think I did that with my Veridian Farms project. So where you undertook that and we had many employees back then. It was a lot of work. I really want to be part of a very dedicated team that has a very clear goal in what they're doing in the winery with the wines. And a small team, probably family-owned winery would be great, because I want to be at a place where I can be exposed to different facets of it. So whether it's helping out in the vineyard for a little bit, being in the cellar, definitely being in the cellar more than the tasting room at this point. I still can do the tasting room work and enjoy it, but I definitely enjoy being more on the production side. So being with a small focused team that is clear in what they want to do, is very intentional in what they're doing, that's where I'd like to be. So at this point in my life, it's really about doing what makes me happy. Turning 50 has made me reflect quite a bit on my life and what I want to do with what's left of it. So, and I'm fortunate enough where I'm in the position where I can do what I enjoy as a source of work. So, do what I enjoy and not make any compromises on that. So, yeah. And be surrounded by people that I enjoy their company, so do what I love. So.
All right, last question for you. To this point, tell me about your proudest accomplishment or biggest achievement. What have you done so far as you look back that fills you with the most pride? Personally, professionally, in any realm.
Personally, I'd say my proudest achievement is the relationships that I built with people who call me their friend. So, and then professionally, I think it's having that determination and that drive to go after something and do it, even when it looks like it's something that I shouldn't be able to do. So, there's a guy in his 40s, mid-40s, going to work harvest, or taking, chemistry classes to learn all about wine, or learning how to drive tractors and set up irrigation, and build a farm business, having never even grown up on a farm. I think, and I have my parents to thank for that, having that discipline and that determination to not accept, no, you can't do that, and just do it and have the full confidence and faith in yourself and in your abilities to be able to carry that out. So.
All right. All the questions that I have for you today. Anything I didn't ask that I should have? Anything we didn't cover or talk about today that you're hoping to talk about?
No, I think that was great.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share with us. Congratulations and good luck on your upcoming adventure.
Thank you.
And we'll go ahead and let you off the hook.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.